that time period of my life, I made some of the probably most demonic music I've ever made. It had more to do with gang violence and all that type of stuff. One of my hit songs was called Alone, Let the Hell Begin. Just some crazy, I mean, some of the most demonic stuff I've ever heard. My mindset was strictly on making money, strictly on whatever and however I had to do it. And I think this is when things started kind of getting a little dicey at that time. After promoting that type of music and bringing that type of attention to myself, I just remember it getting so bad where like now I could feel the energy was coming back towards me. Like I felt it going out into the world, and I saw like all the stuff it was doing, but it was like it came around full circle. I got a call, weirdly enough, I got a call from a record label. The contract, the money that was on the line was like $23 million. So it was a lot of
And
money.
now Satan's coming in with this temptation, with this big money
I
deal.
remember when I got that call, it was so crazy because it happened shortly afterwards. You know, I didn't want it. I was like, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I saw a demonic figure at the door, and I knew at that time, I knew it was Satan. At that point, I understood that our realms were more connected than people really understand.
Hi, welcome to Touching the Afterlife. I'm excited today to have with us Jonathan. He has been holding on to his testimony since 2016. He's ready to share it today. He encountered God and Satan all in the same week. You don't want to miss his powerful story today. So, welcome with me, Jonathan. Why don't you start with where you want to start today, Jonathan?
I just remember growing up, you know, at a young age. My parents, they were just fighting a lot, kind of clashing. They weren't seeing eye to eye, and so it wasn't very cohesive. The easiest thing to describe it is just they just weren't. It just wasn't working, and I think it just made me not want to be there. It made me not want to be involved in it. It made me kind of want to like be to myself. Growing up, I also had a sister, but I would say I was more of an only child because she was so much older than me. And so she had moved out at a very young age. So I kind of was there by myself and really have anybody to talk to discuss, you know, discuss it with. And so I found myself at a very young age, I think just because of that type of environment. I found myself at a very young age. I started drinking really young, probably at the age of 14. I was really big. I was very heavy set in middle school before that. So I had just gained a lot of weight. I also started smoking at the age of 14. Just like I said, I was just kind of in a place where I wanted to feel love. I wanted to feel acceptance. I think a lot of people want this acceptance, validation, love, and just wanted to be in a loving environment. At the age of 15, I ended up joining a gang, and you know, and I think I did it because, like I said, I just was kind of in a place where I wanted to be part of something, maybe like a brotherhood or something. Like I felt like I could relate to a lot of the guys that I grew up with. I grew up around a lot of people in that atmosphere or in that environment. So, you know, I was cool with them. I felt like I had this same pain as them, maybe not exactly. You know, a lot of them grew up with just a mother in the household. I had this pain and this want for like harmony in my home. And I think it just kind of, I didn't know what to do. So I ended up doing that. And I found myself just, you know, obviously when you make that type of decision, you kind of, you know, you get involved in a lot of stuff. But as I said before, smoking and drinking was just kind of part of my lifestyle. I will say this, my parents, even though they weren't like the best of friends, so to speak, they were great parents. I had to say that. I know growing up, for about a year, they didn't even know I was in the gang because I was just doing my own thing. It was some robbing, it was a lot of drugs involved, but we were younger. We weren't as like crazy as like some of the other gangs. I felt like God was kind of keeping me away from certain things. Like he definitely didn't let me go down a rabbit hole as much as I could have. And So he was definitely, protecting me. Oh, we made a video. We made some video where we were like stacking and we were smoking and we were just having like a little meeting or whatever. And I had my flag and all that stuff. And then my parents, they found the video, and just like this generation, we got to record everything. They found the video, and then obviously they were kind of took back by it, and they were upset, they were scared, and they didn't, obviously they were like, yeah, they didn't want me to be a part of that. Being the good parents that they were, they basically took everything I had, all the colors that I resembled, like I had, and they took it away from me. Nah, you're not going to be repping that. You're not going to be doing that. You're not going to be hanging around. Like they couldn't make me not hang around them. They just put a lot of rules on me, basically. My dad, coming from where he came from, he saw a lot of that growing up, and so he wasn't really like he knew what it was about, and so he was like, nope, you're not going to be around this. And so what ended up happening, maybe after like I said, once they found out, he ended up sending me to a academy. He was going to send me to, I think, like a military school, but he ended up sending me to a tennis academy. And I want to touch on this a little bit, because I don't think I know not too many people that were in gangs played tennis, and that's something my dad kind of got me into at a young age, and I actually got a lot of resentment when I chose to get in the game because of that, because I was different. I wasn't the norm. I had two parents. I was playing tennis, but I felt like I had the pain that a lot of other people were feeling, or I had some type of pain or some type of trauma that a lot of people were feeling, and I just wanted to feel accepted. And so me personally, I had to fight a lot of people. I had to prove myself. I had to prove I wasn't scared and all that type of stuff. Whether people believed it or not, I never was, and I always stepped up to the plate. So I just did what I had to do. Like I said, as my parents stepped in, they started hearing about me getting in fights at school and stuff like that, and there's some things they didn't find out about, but my dad basically wanted to get me out of that environment. So he sent me to a tennis academy. I played tennis. He liked tennis, and it was just a good outlet. So he sent me to a tennis academy. And, when I first got there, it felt very weird, if I'm being honest. I was used to being around a lot more diversity, and I was used to being around like my group of friends. It's just a lot of different people where I grew up in Houston. So but when I got there, it was just people that I wasn't around previously, and not saying everybody was perfect or anything, but it was just a lot of, I would say, some pretty good people. And you know, it just felt kind of weird when I got there. I still kind of had that mentality. And so it took me a while to actually kind of get comfortable with everybody. But, you know, um, eventually I warmed up. I ended up doing really well. Beforehand, when I was doing all the other stuff, smoking and drinking and all the gang activity, grades were horrible, getting in fights, getting in trouble, all that stuff. But when I went here, I had got nominated for like three different awards. I got most improved player. I got the academic award because I made like all A's or whatever, or A's and B's. And then I got the leadership award. And this was like the biggest award you can get at that academy. And it's called the Ryan Spencer Ritchie Award. And so and just to give some backstory, I was like one of the only black people there. So, like I said, it was a little different for me. And I thought that was, when I look back on that, I thought that was so profound that, I'm just this little old black kid and I'm in this tennis academy. I don't really fit in, or I felt like I didn't fit in, but I thought that was very profound that I did so well. And that also, they ended up giving me such a prominent award. And so, I left that. Eventually, I left that academy. I went there my senior year in high school. So Now I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. I remember thinking about going to the Marines. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I remember a recruiter was talking to me, and I thought it was interesting. I liked the structure that went on at the academy, and the guy that was running it was an ex-Marine, I think, or something like that. And I was like, I think I want to do this. But my mom, my mom had other ideas. She was not playing that. She was like, "No, you're not going to the army." She was like, "You're going to school." And so I was like, all right, mom. And weirdly enough, like I said, I even though I played tennis, I wasn't your normal tennis player growing up. A lot of them started at a very young, like at 5, 7. I think I started at 13, and I didn't even know like everything, like how the circuit worked. And so weirdly blessed, like fortunately, and I definitely this came from God when I look back. I got a bunch of scholarship offers, or not a bunch, but I just got some scholarship offers to different schools. And so I ended up going to school on a full scholarship, and I went to play tennis. Like I said, I never thought I was that good. I was okay. But I ended up getting a scholarship. I went to a school in Virginia, and I ended up playing for about 3 years. While I was there, I left kind of that structure, and I kind of reverted back, to the way I was doing things before. I started kind of hanging around kind of the same crowd. I started smoking again, drinking again, partying this time. And I even started like selling, drugs on campus. So it definitely did not turn out the same way the academy did. Long story short, I ended up losing my scholarship. I ended up coming back home, just because I wasn't doing what I needed to do. And I guess I was kind of like starting over. I came back home. I started being a tennis coach part-time, and because I just needed to make some money. I was good at tennis, and so I started doing that. But I was still, weirdly enough, I was still kind of trying to find myself. And I started doing a mixture of things. I was doing tennis as just part-time job, and then I started doing music. One of my friends was doing music, and me and him used to do music back in the day just for fun, and he knew I was pretty good at it, so he kind of introduced me. So we started doing music together, traveling and doing a bunch of stuff, and it was secular music, at this time. And he wasn't necessarily like in the gang like mindset like that, but I still was. So my music was a lot more raunchy, a lot more secular, a lot more, I would say, demonic. And we kind of had a fallout. We didn't really click when it came to like who would receive what. So we kind of had yeah, we just stopped kind of working together. And then at that point, I started hanging around with another guy. He was in a gang. He was kind of a big time drug dealer. I started hanging out with him, and we kind of had this like master plan. Like, I needed to make money. We wanted to make music. And so the idea was he was going to kind of front me some stuff so I could make some money, and then so I could push our music, because that was our plan. So we started getting into that type of stuff, and I was talking to him. He kind of was like in rehabilitation, I guess, because he had came back from jail, whatever. He had been gone for a while, and he kind of had some issues. But he was supposed to help me kind of get my foot in the game, and he was supposed to help us start pushing our music. We did a lot of music together. Long story short on that, it did not work out the way I intended it to work out. Every time, like, we were supposed to be getting some weight for me to move or whatever, something would happen. And when I look back on that time, I just remember like we kind of was like arguing, because I was like, bro, like, we're supposed to be doing this, we supposed to be doing that, supposed to be making this money. And it was crazy how God never allowed me to cross that line at that level, you know. And because he wasn't a small time person, he was kind of big. And so but every time something would was supposed to transact, something would happen, like whether cops would get involved or whether he would get in trouble, or something just wouldn't like correspond to the point where we could like start this business so we could start making money. And so I'm just like, whatever. I'm just like, all right, well, we gonna keep doing this music. We just gonna try to do it the hard route, whatever. So we're still doing secular music. Like I said, he was in the gang, he was doing drugs. I was still in that mindset. I'm smoking every day, I'm doing my music. And I have to say, in that time period of my life, I made some of the probably most demonic music I've ever made. And it's just because of my mindset. I My mindset was strictly on making money, strictly on whatever and however I had to do it. And so, I understood the game was very dangerous. I understood the game was very you had to watch your back, and it wasn't nothing to play with. So, I had the mindset like, whatever needs to go down, we gonna take care of it. So that's also what I was putting in my music. So I probably made some of the most, yeah, bad music I've made in my life during that time frame. And I was promoting it, I was pushing it. I had a song called, and this will show you why it was so demonic. One of my hit songs was called "Alone, Let the Hell Begin." And I made that song. It was more of a gang, uh had more to do with gang violence and all that type of stuff. And I just remember that song. I was promoting it for a while, and I remember, and I think this is when things started kind of getting a little dicey at that time. I remember promoting that song, and I was getting a lot of feedback from it, or like I was getting a lot of people were liking it because people just like that type of stuff for whatever reason. But I started hearing about a lot of killings. I started hearing about a lot of murders. I started hearing about a lot of people, um, like in the news and everything, about just some crazy. I mean, some of the most demonic stuff I've ever heard. Like friends doing this, like it was crazy. And I it's so weird because at the time I wasn't really tapped in like that, but I could feel it. And for whatever reason, I always was able to connect it to myself. I feel like I was connected to it somehow. I don't know why. I know now it was like a spiritual realm that I was in, but I just felt connected to all these incidences that were going on. And so, I kept doing it. I didn't think nothing about it. I would just smoke it away and just keep doing my thing. And you know, I just kept doing it. And then at the time, like I said, we weren't moving the weight, at least nothing major. And so, I was still kind of going back and forth. I was staying with different people. I was staying with him sometimes. I was staying with my other coworker sometimes, or my old coworker. And then I was also staying at my parents' house. And so I think this was a very big turning point in my life because after promoting that type of music and bringing that type of attention to myself, I was staying at my parents' house at one time, and I just remember it getting so bad where like now I could feel the energy was coming back towards me. Like I felt it going out into the world, and I saw like all the stuff it was doing, but it was like it came around full circle. It was like it was coming back to me at that time. I started hearing threats. If you're in the streets, and one thing I learned about being in the gang is that there's street code, there's street talk, and people send messages like that in the streets. And so I was very like familiar with that. So I knew there was a lot of threats coming back my way. And the funny thing is, or it's not really funny, but the crazy thing is like it was really more spiritual than anything. It wasn't like, you know, I was beefing with one person and he was beefing with me and then it clashed. It was literally just part of like this demonic realm that I was in. It was just feeding into that spirit. And so, like I said, long story short, I started like receiving threats for my life, right? And I remember, like I said, I was at my parents' house, and I remember telling them, I was like, "Hey, I think we should leave. I think there's a hit out on me, and I don't think we should stay here." And my parents, they did exactly what they normally do. Plus they didn't believe me. Like, they were like, "Man, you smoke too much, you're crazy. You need to stop smoking, stop hanging around with your people or whatever, and you can't do anything." Like, they basically tried to like shut me down. They just didn't let me do anything. My I had like guns or whatever in the house, and they were mine. Every time I had a gun, my mom would throw it away because my mom didn't really play that. Like, she wasn't like, she didn't play with that type of stuff or that type of behavior. So they basically took away everything I had to kind of protect the house. I was still on my parents' phone line at the time. So they took away my phone. They took away, and so I was kind of in a weird spot where I couldn't really go like, I could go somewhere, but I would just be leaving them at the house. So I was like, I have to stay here. And so I remember, like, for like it came a time where I was like staying outside at nighttime, and I had like a little knife. Like, I had one of those blades, because I knew there was something coming after me. I just knew it. I could feel it. And I wanted to protect the house, so I would literally stay outside in the bushes, waiting for somebody to show up and waiting for somebody to do something. And I just felt obligated to doing whatever I had to do to protect everybody. And I did this for about 3 days, but I felt I felt like I couldn't do anything. I felt like I couldn't call anybody, I couldn't do anything, and I just felt hopeless. Like, I just felt so hopeless, because eventually I had to go to sleep, and I just, in the back of my mind, it's like, I don't want anything to happen to anybody. I don't want anything to happen here. And so I remember, on the third day of doing that, I remember the only thing I thought to do was just to pray. Because it's just weird, and I don't know how to explain it, but it just felt like each day it was just getting closer to me. And so on that third day, I just prayed like as hard as I could. I said, "God, if I'm going to go out, if I'm going to go out, I don't want to go out as this monster that everybody may see me as." Because the music I was promoting made me look like a monster. It made me look like just a bad person. And I said, if I'm going to go out, I want to go out just being known as a good person. I want to be known as the person at the academy. I want to be known as like some of the older elders that knew me, as this good kid. Because, people said I was a good kid growing up, and maybe I was just confused at making certain choices. But I just asked for that. I said I wanted to go out just being a good person. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to bring this up. So I tried, when I said that. No, I tried to take down the music, because at a certain point I knew it came from the music. And so I tried to take down the music, and for whatever reason, this is how I know it's a demonic stronghold. I could not take it down. As hard as I tried, I clicking all these buttons. Wi-Fi wasn't working. None of that disconnect. It did not work. I could not take down the music. So I ended up praying that prayer. And then all of a sudden, my dad calls me downstairs, and he says, "John, come downstairs." And so I come downstairs, and then he just looks at me, and he has like this smile, and it's not like a bad smile, it's just like a loving smile. And then he just gives me a hug, and then I he says, I hear this very loud voice come from my dad, and it said, "I love you." And that voice was not normal. It sounded like thunder, like lightning, like whenever lightning strikes, it was as loud as thunder. And I felt like a majestic and electrifying, and a I just felt such a powerful, like, force or spirit come into my body. And it was the loudest thing I've ever heard. And it just like, it's almost like it hit me, my whole body, when I heard that voice. But it kind of sounded like my dad, but it wasn't. My dad's not that loud. But and it said, "I love you." And as soon as it hit me, I bowed down to my knees. Like, I just instantly, like, it was almost like I didn't have control of my body. And when I look back on that, I know that's like how Judgment Day is going to be. Every knee will bow, or every head will bow, everybody will kneel to God. And at that time, that's exactly what I did after I heard that voice. And I just started crying, because everything that I believe I was looking for in all the stuff I was doing, which was love and compassion and just this immense amount of love, I felt it in that one voice, like that one saying. And I started crying, and I just, I there was like this amount of peace that took over me in that moment. And so, eventually, I get up. My dad, he just gave me a hug, and he goes back into his office or whatever, and I like go back to my room. And I'm like, at this point, I am at peace. I know the other stuff had happened already. I know like everything that was going on, but I am at total peace, total peace. And so I'm just in my bed, just like, yo, like, I was just chilling. And then I heard another voice, and this time it sounded like my mom. And the voice said, "John." It just very loud. I'm sorry I had to scream, but it was so loud. And the voice then said, "Do the music." And because I didn't, I was, like I said before, that I heard that first voice that sounded like my dad, I wasn't able to put some good music on there. So then when I heard it the second time, I was like, okay, I get it. So I went on there, and this time I was able to take down the music. I was able to get, like, I was able to literally, like, I wasn't able to take it down before. It was so crazy. And at this time, it allowed me to take down the music, and then I was able to upload my new music. And I just want to say something. My very first song, no, no, actually, this was a song like I was just kind of messing with, and I put it on there, but it is on my album, my first album. It was called Terminator. But I put that song on there, and over time, I could just feel the shift of things changing in the world, in the atmosphere, in my environment. And so at that point, I understood what my purpose was, and I understood, I think, my divine mission, like what my mission was here on this earth.
Jonathan, you're saying that your dad spoke to you, but you felt like it was the power of God and you felt the presence of God speaking through him. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. It was, yeah, it was something that you can't, like, it's not something normal. It's not something, it was just so powerful. Like, it was something I've never felt in my life. Like I said, it had so many like aspects to it. I felt love, I felt compassion. It was majestic. It was like electrifying. And there's no, if I'm being honest, there's not enough words to explain what I felt in that moment.
You knew it was supernatural. And did your dad respond? What was his reaction?
My dad didn't even know it. He didn't even know what I was talking about later on when I brought it up to him. He was like, "For real? Okay." I mean, obviously he knew he said he loved me, but I don't think he understood what was happening in that moment. And every time I tell him, yeah, he still doesn't know. He was unaware. It's kind of funny. It's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Wow.
Like, whenever I heard the music part, I knew it's like it kind of downloaded some like instructions in my head. And so I knew exactly what he was saying. And so I basically went back to my platform, and I was able at this time to take down my old music, and I was able to upload just some music I had been working on before. It was like some conscious music, but it was good music, and I was able to upload it. And so once I uploaded it, I knew this was what he wanted me to do. And then later on, I was like, okay, at this point, I understood what my purpose was. Like, I understood what my mission was, for God's kingdom. I started doing Christian hip hop, or gospel music, gospel hip hop. And the crazy thing is, the first song I wrote was the song that caused all that chaos. Um, and I called it "Faith Never Alone." I took the same beat, and I didn't know I could do this, if I'm being honest, but I was just like, I know this is what I'm supposed to do. And I wrote a song called "Faith Never Alone," and I flipped the title, and that was the first song I made for that album. And so I released that music. I started performing, and when I tell you, like, the power of the message that God was giving me, that God was putting in my heart, it was something I had never felt or seen. But I mean, I have videos of me performing, and I mean, people, it's like you can just see how it translates. It's amazing. So I was doing the music, I was doing really well. Or I'm sorry, I definitely skipped something. Later that week, God was downloading a lot of stuff to me. He was showing me visions. In my mind, I knew I had to read my Bible. Like, it was like, okay, Bible, prayer, music. It was almost like everything that I needed to do was, I just need to read my Bible, and I needed to connect with God as much as possible. And that's all I wanted to do, if I'm being honest, at that point. And then later on that week, I remember, when I started, doing when I just started getting together these plans, I got a call. Weirdly enough, I got a call from a record label, or a recruiter from a record label. And this happened maybe a day after this, the when I heard from God. And the record label basically was trying to get me, because I was doing music before, and I was getting some connections, and I was pretty good at it. But they asked me if I wanted to do a song, or basically if I wanted to, like, try to get a contract. And the money that was on the line was like $23 million. So it was a lot of money. And it wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say like somebody was like, hey, here's $23 million. But basically they wanted me to do a music video with another rapper, but they were, a secular rapper, and they wanted me to, basically kind of do a song with them. And I remember when I got that call, it was so crazy because it happened shortly afterwards. I didn't want it. I was like, nah, I'm good. Like,
That is super interesting, Jonathan, because right after you found your purpose, you get the temptation, because earlier you said that making money was the only thing on your mind. And now Satan's
mm,
coming in with this temptation, with this big money deal.
yeah, it's crazy how it happened. And that's all, like I said, that's all I was doing it for, was to try to make, as much money as possible. And literally, yeah, like the recruiter, and I have been talking to a few people, but nothing substantial came through. But then a bunch of money was on the line, and I just remember just kind of reading into it and just looking at certain things, and things were just pointing out to me, and it sounded so demonic. And so I just ended up, I was like, no, I'm good. And they kept trying to convince me. And then the other thing is, they wanted me to replace an artist that had just recently got killed. So there's a lot more to it. And and so I knew this wasn't, if I'm being honest, at that time, I didn't know it was necessarily Satan. I just knew it wasn't good. And I was like, I don't want it. So I basically just turned it down, and then I just kept, doing my own thing. And I ended up, I want to say like a week later, And excuse me with the time, because there's so much that was going on at that time, and it's such a long time ago. But some time later, I remember I was sleeping in my room, and I remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I remember I saw a demonic figure at the door, and and I knew at that time, I knew it was Satan. And because like everybody describes what he looks like or whatever, but and I'm gonna just say this, it is exactly what people think he looks like. The red figure, horns, like just a demon, just whatever you think a demon looks like. I don't want to say whatever you think a demon looks like, but the picture that you give demons, especially Satan. I saw him at the door, and he just looked at me, and he had like these claws or whatever. And then I remember he coming to me, and I'm laying down, and I don't know if I was awake or asleep, but I'm pretty sure I don't know. I was like in the mid, I think I was in limbo or something. But I remember he kind of jumped on me, and he literally tried to claw my face. And I think this had a lot to do with me turning down that deal. And weirdly enough, the next morning I remember waking up, and I wasn't sure if that was real or not, but I remember going in the bathroom, and I actually had a scratch on my face. It wasn't anything like bad, but I could tell that at that point I understood that our realms were more connected than people really understand. Cause I did have a scratch on my face, and it healed like quickly, but I had something did something. And so at that point I realized that that was Satan. Now, to this day, I consider myself a servant of God. I consider myself a soldier, and I consider myself a disciple. I'm always trying to learn. And but I was still growing at that time. As much as I was trying to do, and as much as I wanted to do, and as much as God put on my heart, I still, I was still young. And so I didn't realize that, I had, like, I'm gonna say this, I had a target on my back. You know, um, Satan, the reason why he did what he did is because he wanted to trick me, or he wanted to entice me, but he also he when I denied him, you could just see how much hate he had for me. This is so this next part, I feel like this is kind of, I consider myself to be like a lot of people in the Bible, but I also consider myself to be kind of like a prodigal son. Also, so what happens, like, maybe some months down the line, I'm doing the music, I'm doing really good. I'm changed, like I could just see the shift in my life. I'm just at this level. I have this aura about me that I've never felt before. And I remember I tried to, I'm the type person, I want to share the gospel. I want to help people. I want to bring people closer to Christ. And what I ended up doing was I ended up going to hang out with some of my old friends, and I just wanted to share like the gospel. Like, that's all it was. I didn't want to like go back to my old lifestyle. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to literally maybe enlighten them, or just get them, like, I felt like I should tell them what I had experienced, and maybe try to save them, get them salvation. And I found myself indulging in something that I wasn't um that I now know that I should not have been indulging, because of the I think the spirit that I was in. And I didn't do nothing like crazy bad. Like, it's not like I was choosing to do something, but I went to hang out with some friends, and they were smoking. And I used to smoke all the time. I used to smoke weed all the time. And so I ended up smoking this, and little did I know that was going to be a roller coaster for the next several years of my life. And long story short, because I smoked that, I believe the realm that I was in, I was entering because it was a bunch of guys there. The realm that I was in was a demonic realm, and I believe Satan was waiting for me to, trip up or whatever. And going to, I ended up getting diagnosed with um, some doctors said schizophrenia, some doctors said bipolar disorder. Some doctors said depression, anxiety. I mean, anything you could think of, like they were basically diagnosing me with that. And I remember the next like 3 months of my life, I was in a psych ward. I was going in and out of hospitals, and my reality was not the same. It was not yeah. I didn't even, I didn't even have, like, I did not know what was going on.
So you didn't realize at the time those were demons coming in.
Yeah, I no, I had no idea. I did not know what was going on. All I knew is that my reality was like, it was so thrown off. It was the worst. And I have to say this, and this is for anybody that wants to escape from reality, and anybody that wants to escape, because I know I used to smoke to escape as a coping mechanism. It was the scariest feeling that I you could ever deal with, because I tell people, I know sometimes people want to escape reality, so they go do drugs or they go do this. But whenever you do that drug, and like, I know people do shrooms and they see like monsters or whatever. If you ever do that drug and you can't escape that perception, that reality, that's how I felt, and it was for months on months. So I there was no, like, I go to sleep and I'm normal. It was like I wake up, I'm still seeing the same thing. I go to sleep, I wake up, I'm still seeing the same thing. And this happened for months. And it was so bad to the point that my dad thought he was like going to have to send me away for life. Like, if I'm being honest, that's what he told me. He was like, I didn't think you were going to come back. Like, that's how bad it was. And I didn't realize, I know now that these were a bunch of demonic forces trying to distort and trying to just take control of me, like really just trying to like control me, and yeah, just trying to distort my reality, my perception. And it was very, I have to say, it was the most, I hated going through that. When I finally got cleared, the final doctor was saying that, this is the crazy thing. Now, I did not sign up for this, but the doctor said, they said that I had a lot of drugs in my system. They said I had heroin, I think I had like meth, I had weed, and I had some other drugs in my system. And in my mind, once I heard that, I said, I've never done that in a day in my life. It just turns out that the guys I was hanging with, they were doing that type of stuff. And so they were smoking stuff that I had not been doing with them before. And so it just opened up a realm of just, yeah, it just opened up a realm that, yeah, that really messed me up for some time. And I remember for a long time when I finally got cleared and I finally got out, I felt so guilty. I felt so bad. I just felt horrible about the whole thing, because, my intentions were good, and I didn't want to do that stuff. And I just have to say this too. In that time frame of having these psychotic episodes, I was roaming. The devil was trying to take me out. He was definitely trying to take me out. I saw a lot of guns were pointed at me. There's so much stuff that happened in that time frame that I know that the devil wanted to take me out. But the fact that I'm still here today, the fact that I still am able to do what I do, and the fact that I'm have a clear mind, I know that God's love and God's favor and God's like grace over my life outweighs anything that any demonic force can ever do. Because there is no way that I should be here right now if I'm going off of just everything that happened. And so, but for a long time, I had this sense of guilt when I did come out of it. I felt unworthy. I felt like I didn't deserve to pursue this. this mission, this career, whatever. And I didn't think I deserved it. Like I just went. I was kind of in like a very sad depression. I had a lot of depression, and so I kind of hung up the music for a while. And I, I just started doing other stuff, not necessarily bad things. I went back to school, which was good. And I ended up becoming like an engineer. I didn't do nothing really bad. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be in the limelight. I didn't want people to know who I was. And I felt like I needed to be to the side. Like I said, I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't doing what he called me to do. Um and I think that's a very important message too, because a lot of people, there's one thing I used to say: a lot of people do good things for the wrong reasons, and then a lot of people do bad things for the right reasons. And I think when you're aligned with God, you do the right things for the right reasons, and all that stuff correlates. Like everything flows together. And so I was doing some good stuff. Like I was an engineer. I'm helping people, like, you know, um, I'm helping people, like, with their, make sure that they're good, they're healthy, and doing all this stuff. So it wasn't anything bad, but I just wasn't doing what he told me to do. And so, I just, for a little bit of time, I was doing that, but I just kept feeling this urge over and over that I needed to go back to the music. So every now and then, here and there, I would just do music. I would like write songs. I wouldn't put it out. I wouldn't do anything, but I'll just write a bunch of stuff. And also, when I went through that, now that I remember that psychiatric time frame, I actually lost that ability for a little bit. I wasn't as good as I was when I first had it, like beforehand. Like I couldn't put together the songs like I could before. And it was a growing, it was almost like rehabilitation. It was almost like physical therapy for me to be able to get back to where I am now. And because I had lost that ability, and a lot of people would tell you, like, growing up, I was really good. Like I made songs like off the top of my head without even like thinking, and it was just a freestyle. And yeah, I wasn't able to do that anymore. And so, I just got to a point where I wasn't good at it anymore. I felt guilty. I just felt bad, and so I didn't want to do it. But I just kept feeling this urge. Like I just kept feeling this pull. Like I still wanted it on the inside, but I just felt bad about it. And so, eventually I got to a point where, you know, I I think just God just really settled into my heart, and he made me I think I went to church. I went to a church where I live now. And he had been talking to me before. Like I was hearing him, like I could hear him different times, but I was ignoring him. And then one time it just really convicted me. And I don't know, I started crying again, and I really started realizing, like, I can't give up on this. I can't stop doing what he called me to do because I made a mistake. And what it just made me realize is I have to be wiser. I have to be smarter, and I have to understand that this is a war. Like this is a spiritual war between good and evil. And but God has the victory. As much as we try to put it on ourselves, as much as we try to carry the burden, God has the victory. His burden is light because he is victorious. He has won the battle before we even knew it. And that helped me come back to being who I was when I first and initially encountered God. And so now I am a way more sound and more privy person. I'm older now. I feel like God has been pouring into me a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge and understanding. And I know this is still a journey. And the funny thing is, I'm gonna say this: My old music, like I said, a lot of people were liking it. But one thing I'm noticing is that all that stuff I went through, all that stuff I encountered, it's in my new music. And my new music is 10 times more powerful than my old music. And it just showed me that he still gets the redemption through our trauma, through our hurt, through our pain, and through our struggles. This is what makes him, this is perfect for him because he is our strength and our weaknesses. And his glory shines brighter now more than it did before, when I had first came out of my first, I guess, testimony, right? And so now I'm just, right now, my message or my purpose, once again, is to get the word out, to get the gospel out, to do the music, and to change as many lives as I possibly can. And I'm not stopping until, he says it's time to stop. So that's where I'm at.
Jonathan, I love your story. Thank you for sharing. What stood out to me is that you said in the beginning that when you were doing the demonic music, that you were connected to a lot of demonic things in that realm. And then when you went into the worship and you flipped it, you then were more in tune with the spirit, which is such a dichotomy. And I love how you flipped the script when you changed from hell never alone to faith never alone. What a beautiful way to bring God glory.
Yes, I think it was the most, let me not say the most, but it was such a significant part of my life. It was such a, I mean, it was such a transformation, in the midst of all that. And yeah, it was something that you can't fake it. You can't, it's hard to explain, if I'm being honest, because there's just so much going on. But it was such a powerful move, that God was, moving in my life and in my spirit, and in my heart and in my mind. So, it was very prominent, very profound. And yeah, I never forget that day. I don't think you can forget that, if I'm being honest.
If people want to hear your music, Jonathan, how could they get a hold of it?
So you can actually find my music. My artist name is Meandjonathan, which I think is very funny because of all the stuff I went through. Because some people would say me and Jonathan can sound like I have a battle within myself, right? But the intention of the name, itself, is actually, supposed to be God and Jonathan. And it also can be looked at as like me and other people, like you and Jonathan, or somebody else and me, because I want people to understand that no, we're not in this by ourselves. What you're going through may be similar to what I'm going through. What they're going through may be similar to what you're going through, and we're all connected in some way, shape, or form. But ultimately, the me is God, and that's who I want to be connected to, until the end of time. And so, people can find my music on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. And the most recent album I have out right now is called Scriptures of My Life, Epistles of Jonathan. And there's an extended version. I would suggest people to listen to that. And it's like I said, that album is a journey. It's very, it's kind of like the intro, to like my growth and my progress. But it is a very powerful album to me. And I think it can change a lot of people, if you give it a chance. And like I said, this is just the first of the other stuff. Like, I'm in the other stuff is way more, to me, way more powerful, but I don't think you can truly understand it until you go through I think they call it the refiner's fire. That was like my refiner's fire album, just going through all that stuff, and that's where he brought me to.
And you said this happened in 2016. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That was the
So,
beginning.
just like another guest, 10 years later, if you can define a word right now in your life, for some reason I feel led to ask this. What is a word that the Lord is giving you for where you are at in your walk with Him?
um Resilience is so powerful. I don't know the scriptures by heart, but I know it is not the strong. I know it says something about it's not the strongest, it's not the fastest, but it's the person that endures the longest. You know, and I have to find that scripture, but I think resilience is so powerful and it speaks a lot to God. And I think He appreciates whatever you go through and whatever you're willing to push through on His behalf. Because we have to endure some things in life. It's He never promised life to be easy. And truth be told, nothing worthwhile in life is ever really easy. You usually have to work hard for it. And I think you build a lot more appreciation and gratitude for it because of that. And so resilience would be the word I would like to use.
Are you referring to Romans 5:4 that says endurance develops strength of character and character develops our confident hope?
Yes, ma'am.
Praise God. I would love for you. Thank you again for sharing with us today. And is there anything in particular you'd like to pray us out on? Can you pray us out?
Yes, I can. So, God, I just want to thank us. I want to thank you first and foremost for bringing us together, for letting people be able to hear your word, your message, your sermon, and understand that we are vessels just trying to get out your gospel. We are just trying to enlighten people, save people, and enhance people's lives and to share your glory. For the coming of your day is coming sooner than we know. And that
Yes.
if people really get to know you and people really get a relationship with you, they can see and feel and experience the love that you come with, the passion that you have, and just show us how much you have done for us and how much you are willing to do for us. So I just thank you, God, for all that you're doing, all that you've done, and all that you continue to do on our behalf. And all praise and glory goes to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.